In Yemen, unfortunately, it looks like we have killed 4 more civilians than we realized. And now we realize that there's 150 civilians at a minimum that we killed in strikes in Yemen. It looks like there might be a lot more. And that was right after Pete Hegseth gutted civilian protections. So, John, I'm gonna ask you more about this after I give you all the facts of this story. But let me just start by asking you one quick question here. Do you think that we've loosened the war rules of engagement too much here, and that's what's leading to a lot more civilian deaths?
Oh, very much so. I think that's clearly what has happened here. And it's so much broader too, Cenk. You know, the president has been very clear and very public about his ongoing desire to attack civilian infrastructure, whether it's in Iran or in Yemen. Attacking civilian infrastructure is a black and white war crime. You can't do that, and we do it anyway. And if we do it, then the Israelis are gonna do it, the Saudis are gonna do it, the Emiratis are gonna do it, and the next thing you know, 4, 5, 6 different countries are at war in Yemen, which can barely defend itself, and frankly is at war with itself. And then you get these ridiculous numbers of civilian casualties.
Yeah, so I want to talk more about the downsides for us as well about that and why we're doing it. But first, let me tell everybody what's happening there now. So these are reports from 2025 that are now coming in. We had a window of time there where we were bombing the hell out of Yemen. Let me go to the Washington Post to explain here. US forces attacked at least 1,000 targets in that time. And it was a span of about 50 days. According to Pentagon figures, in a bid to diminish the Houthis' arsenal and restore freedom of navigation to the waters off of Yemen. Now, this is when the Houthis were striking ships in the Red Sea to try to protect the Palestinians in Gaza and impose costs on Israel and other governments that were not basically not caring about the Palestinians and helping and aiding and abetting the Israelis. So they were trying to prevent a genocide from their point of view. We attacked them for 50 days. We hit 1,000 targets, and then US forces, they acknowledged last year, killed 153 civilians and wounded nearly 250 others. And that's what we know so far. Now, one attack on April 28, 2025 alone killed 68 civilians in northwestern Yemen, according to the Pentagon's review. So now the Pentagon has reviewed 3 of those attacks, and that's where we're getting this information, but they've yet to review 15 more attacks that have not been analyzed yet. They're getting around to it, they assure us. So the executive director of Air Wars has stated, how are they gonna keep up with the scale and pace of the war we've seen in Iran? They chose to hit 13,000 targets in Iran in 40 days. That's 10 times more than in the Yemen campaign. And let's remember how this all started. This is what Pete Hegseth said about Iran.
I stand before you today with one unmistakable message about Operation Epic Fury. America is winning decisively, devastatingly, and without mercy. Our warfighters have maximum authorities granted personally by the president and yours truly. Our rules of engagement are bold, precise, and designed to unleash American power, not shackle it. This was never meant to be a fair fight, and it is not a fair fight. We are punching them while they're down, which is exactly how it should be.
John, is it supposed to be like that? That we punch people when they're down, we make sure that nothing is fair, we kill their civilians. Isn't that kind of an old school way of thinking where we're gonna get them to surrender by just incinerating enough of their citizens? But these days, if you're not willing to go to that step where you incinerate everyone, you just make them angrier and are more likely to fight you, it seems to me, but I'm an outsider to this. You did counterterrorism. What's your opinion?
Oh yeah, you've hit it on the head. And it does several different things at the same time. First of all, it drives disparate factions together because the United States, and look at this historically, the United States is never seen as a liberator. It's seen as an attacker and an occupier. And you've got a million different factions in Yemen, whether it's in northern Yemen or southern Yemen. It used to be 2 different countries. And these relentless attacks do nothing more than drive opposing factions together. They unite to protect their country. Now, you can attack radar installations, you can attack fuel depots, you can attack warehouses that are, holding ammunition or spare parts or whatever. You don't have to attack schools and hospitals and bridges and the electrical grid and desalination plants. That's what we're doing. And that doesn't help you win the war. That just pisses people off and unites them against you.
So Hegseth basically took out a group that was meant to look at civilian casualties, took out 90% of its staff. And he seems to have the mentality of, look, if we are tougher and we kill more people, including civilians, that we are more likely to win the war. But in your experience in modern day warfare, doesn't it make us less likely to win the war?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's like we learn nothing from Fallujah or Tikrit, or my God, for that matter, from the bombing of Dresden. Have we learned nothing over the last 80 years relative to civilian casualties? They don't weaken foreign armies. Look what we did to Iran on the very first day of the joint US-Israeli bombing of Iran. We blew up a girls' school. A girls' school. Well, it's no wonder that the Iranian government didn't fall like a house of cards. As soon as we bombed a girls' school and slaughtered children, it pushed all Iranians together to oppose the United States. Frankly, the bold move here would have been something that the Bush administration refused to do. In an earlier generation, the Reagan administration refused to do, and that is to allow the diplomats to do what you're paying them to do, and call a meeting and try and get some of these issues sorted out. Listen, I get that the Houthis support the Palestinians. I think that's a wonderful thing. I really do. But that doesn't mean that if they attack an Indian cargo ship, that you have to just carpet bomb the country to get them to stop. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and so look, we learned these lessons not just recently, all the way back to Vietnam, right? We bombed and bombed, and we did carpet bombing, we did Agent Orange, and we couldn't break their will to resist. And by the way, when then we made a peace deal and then invaded them with Levi's and McDonald's and Nike, we won.
Oh my gosh, Cenk, may I interrupt you? Cenk, I just arrived in Athens yesterday from Vietnam, and I took a tour of the Cu Chi tunnels, the 250 kilometers of tunnels that the Viet Cong used to move weapons and ammunition over the course of decades, beginning with the start of the French, the war against the French colonial occupiers. And my son and I'm here in Athens with my son, we had exactly the same conversation yesterday. I said to him, if you want to overthrow the Cuban government, open the first McDonald's in Havana, because you go to what is now called Ho Chi Minh City. It used to be called Saigon. We bombed them and murdered their people mercilessly from 1959 to 1975, and we lost. But now when you go, it looks like Times Square, and the McDonald's is packed, and there are Starbucks on every corner. In the end, we won, and we won by losing. So if there's a lesson to be learned there, it's engage in diplomacy, open economies, and don't bomb them.
Yeah, so instead we're doing the opposite, which of course leads to the question of why. Like there's a couple possibilities. One is the Israelification of our military and our intelligence operations and our government, which means not just listening to Israel's orders, but starting to copy their methods. So the Israelis wantonly slaughter innocents. We now are slaughtering innocents. We didn't always used to, and I'm again here, I defer to your expertise. I think the American government for a while has killed a lot of people by accident, has been way too aggressive, and Obama bombed a wedding, right? So it's not like this is a new concept, but we generally seem like we were trying not to. Now it looks like we just don't care at all. And so it looks like we're copying our great ally Israel in that. But even so, I don't know why we'd want to, right? So what's going on, John? Are they just cavemen, knuckle draggers, and they're like, we bomb, and they don't know anything any better? Or is there some other reason?
No, this is one of those situations I think that is very complicated. I think that the bottom line is our political, military, and intelligence relationship with Israel has grown so close and so strong that we're almost unable to break away from it now. When I was at the CIA, and I left the CIA 22 years ago, we had to keep the Israelis at arm's length, rather long arm's length, because they were spying on us. Well, as recently as 3 weeks ago, the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency released an all-hands email to all Defense Intelligence Agency employees, telling them to be especially careful right now because the Israelis have ramped up their espionage activities against DOD and specifically DIA. So the Israelis haven't changed over the years. Our politics have changed. Congress is under such intense pressure from AIPAC to further strengthen the relationship between the two countries, to make it even closer than it ever has been. Well, when that starts with politics, it very easily and quickly bleeds into policy. And that's what we're seeing here. We're getting to the point where we're almost going to be unable to extricate ourselves from a deeply entangled relationship when we know that it's wrong. Look at a lower level. Let's not even focus on the federal level. Let's look at the state and the local levels. We have Israeli IDF members and Israeli police training local police departments, like Atlanta, Georgia, for example. Why? Why do we need the Israelis to train our local police? We're the ones who go around the world and train other countries. So I think that the relationship is very deep, it's very complicated, and it's very troubling because we're gonna have a terrible time getting out of it.
Look, just yesterday we covered a clip of Jonathan Greenblatt saying that they spy in on groups on the left, the right, pro-peace movement, and they're basically doing it on behalf of Israel. And then they coordinate with the FBI and the local police, including LA police, to arrest their opponents. So what is this? This is insanity, total insanity. Meanwhile, we turn to the media. I'm gonna show you a clip, I think this is from about 12 years ago from Joe Scarborough. He's back to these antics today as well. We'll show you that later in the show. But I want to show this as an example of what our mainstream media says instead of reality, and then come back and talk about their role as well. So this was his thesis on why we have any trouble in the Middle East. Wait till you see it, watch.
They hate us because of their religion. They hate us because of their culture, and they hate us because of peer pressure. Think about the savagery, just the sheer, unrestrained savagery that we have seen across the Middle East and the Arab world over the past week because of a crude film. They know what they're doing. They know it's a crude film. They know it has nothing to do with the United States government. It is an excuse. They hate us because of waterboarding. No, they don't. They hate us because they hate us. They hate us because of Obama's drone attacks. No, they don't. They hate us because they hate us. They hate us because somebody burned a Quran. No, they don't. They hate us because they hate us. They hate us because of this crude film. No, they don't. They hate us because they hate us.
Seems really sophisticated. So that was 14 years ago. John, is it true that they hate us because their religion, their culture, and they're savages, and they hate us because they hate us?
No, I'm very happy to say that I spent a very good part of my adult life living in the Middle East, and literally none of that is true. I don't mean to laugh because it's deadly serious, but it's so ridiculous, it's so outrageous that I can't help but to chuckle at the absurdity and the idiocy of Joe Scarborough. I mean, Joe Scarborough, listen, he's a lifelong neocon. He almost can't help himself. For a minute, he pretended to be kind of independent and maybe even somebody, from the left or somebody who had moved to the left in adulthood. No, he's just a hater. And you hear language like that, Cenk, from people who just simply don't understand the Middle East. They don't understand the politics. They don't understand the history. They don't understand the culture. It's easy just to hate and point at them.
Yeah, so it might be because we're bombing them. I think that's my alternate theory. And it might be because we're helping Israel occupy 5.5 million Palestinians and oppress them and humiliate them and do a genocide and 7 wars. I know, crazy to actually look at the facts on the ground. But I want to come back to Yemen to finish up. So in Iran, we know what the answer is. Strike a deal, open up the Strait of Hormuz. And at this point, even Trump is saying, I don't even really need them to do anything on the nuclear end. So we were lying about why we invaded because now Trump is dropping the essential reason he claimed that we were invading. And all the other things are gone. We're no longer talking about attacking their ending all of their ballistic missiles and their drone program and all the ridiculous regime change. None of that's going to happen, and even Trump has given up on it. So Iran is straightforward if we can just get them to that agreement and get Trump to that agreement as well. Yemen, we've helped Saudi Arabia devastate Yemen before. Now we're bombing them on behalf of Israel. We just keep bombing and bombing them, and they're already a poor country, not one that's got a blossoming economy or anything. This is quite devastating to Yemen. So other than leaving them alone, what's the right answer for how we should deal with Yemen?
Yeah, I've been to Yemen 5 times over the last 35 years. And every time I go, it's worse than the previous time. Yemen used to be a net food exporter. They provided food not just to the Horn of Africa, but to Saudi Arabia. And there were 2 million Yemenis working in Saudi Arabia until the beginning of the Gulf War in 1990. The Yemeni economy has never recovered from Saudi Arabia's decision to expel literally every Yemeni. But the thing is, the Yemenis are incredibly resourceful people. They're very proud and they're very, very tough. They work hard and they band together when attacked by outsiders. And really the only thing that we can do that is going to improve the situation in the Red Sea and at the Bab el-Mandeb, that very narrow 9-mile opening between the Arabian Peninsula and the Horn of Africa, is to engage them in diplomacy. We've got to sit across the table from them and ask them what we can do to make this right. Well, we know what we have to do to make it right, and neither we nor the Israelis are willing to do it. But we're not going to be able to bomb them into submission. We've tried, it doesn't work. The Saudis have tried, the Emiratis have tried, the Israelis have tried. And while all these bombings are going on, the Yemenis are fighting a civil war amongst themselves. So this just isn't going to work. And doubling down on something that doesn't work just makes your failure twice as bad. It doesn't suddenly work like magic.
Yeah, and John, last thing on that is when we do this, it always feels like we're being counterproductive, right? That and for a reason that is clear, the one you state, they just and the one we've talked about here, they get angry, they want to double down, but there's a second reason that's not talked about as much, which is that when you have civil war, when you have destruction and chaos in a country, moderates are unlikely to rise to the top. Isn't it true that almost always extremists rise to the top? So whenever we do this kind of wanton destruction in a country, we're actually aiding and abetting the extremists in that country?
In 100% of cases, yes. It really is that simple. If you are looking for a technocrat or an intellectual, or let's say a diplomat or a professor that's somehow gonna bubble to the top and bring these different factions together, it's not gonna happen while they're under attack. While they're under attack, they're gonna be looking for military leaders. Or if the attack is asymmetrical or coming from different directions, they're gonna be looking for guerrilla leaders, because they'll take this fight into the mountains. They'll take this fight door to door in the cities and towns. They'll take it, as they have, to sea and attack ships, whether they're military or commercial. They'll take missiles and fire them at Eilat in southern Israel or at Israeli military bases. So yeah, you're right. Attacking relentlessly is just not the answer.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.